Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset.
All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I'm Coach David Syvertsen here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee, and we are back to just the two of us. We have a topic today that was brought up, something I've thought about countless times over the years, and I thought it'd be a fun thing to talk about, but it also just got brought up on the Savant podcast when they kind of broke down the programming from the Legends Championship, and part of their breakdown was talking about how to scale for older age groups and then genders even. And then they kind of went down this rabbit hole a little bit of how to do this with open division, like all males and females, and then age groups a little bit, but then Training Think Tank did an episode on this as well. And it's hard to get a firm answer on it because there is no firm answer, right? When I started CrossFit, they basically just had your weights of 135, 95 for guys, 135, girls, 95, 75, 55. And you would always kind of pay attention to it a little bit, but there was never a template percentage of what males are lifting. That's what the females are lifting. And then now you get to the age groups. There's no set template for open division versus the young masters versus the middle-aged masters versus the older masters. It's kind of just like, hey, it's probably approximate. It's probably right. Let's just go from here. And I want to get into, well, my opinion, Sam's opinion, what's being done in the CrossFit space right now, both in your gym and competitively, in terms of how to come up with the correct weights so that all girls and all guys have the same stimulus. As again, that is the purpose of scaling. It's getting as many people in the room as possible to feel the same way. You're never going to have a perfect answer for that, especially in a class of 20 people, right? But there is a stimulus behind every test of fitness, behind every CrossFit workout, and you need to have an answer to the question, how do you scale guy to girl, but then also age group to age group? Sam, opening thoughts on this, because I feel like you have probably some good input on this one.
Yeah, this is complicated for a number of reasons. There are so many factors, and I think when I listened to the Savant podcast, they didn't have any general good thoughts about principles about scaling. They argued, should you program for women and then men, scale up for men versus men scaling to women? How do you scale age groups? And I think that the factors that are involved are so numerous. I'm living it because I'm a master's in the 50 to 54 category. And it depends on a lot of different things. What was my training volume that week? What are the stimuli that you're looking for? There are certain things I feel that I can hang with younger athletes on, but then there's other things that I know will have an increased risk of injury. If you look at the 50, 54-year-olds in the games last year, 3 of them got knocked out of 10 got knocked out because of injury. So maybe they could have done the workouts, but maybe the risk of injury at that age is just higher.
Yep.
So should you be programming for injury risk versus what they can actually do? Are you thinking about the volume that they're actually doing? This is really complicated, and I don't think there's necessarily a good answer for most of it. It also depends on your gym. I don't think you can just say, for a lot of these things, train for the best, scale for the rest, like we normally do. I think you really do have to take other factors into consideration. And when you program for women, I see it every day on the WOD. Depending on the WOD, I will look at the women's scores, or I will say there's no way that's even close, either to like significantly better or significantly not as fast as the men.
Yep.
And the more I try to wrestle with it as a guy, especially when I decide, well, what am I going to do as a master's? It's tough.
Right. Yeah. So I think the most important thing to do before we get into it is say there is no template right now. There is no answer. I think there's trending in the right direction. Right. There's stuff trending in the right direction with what to do with the weights, what to do with the movements, what to correlate with each other, what to kind of just keep away from each other. Example, the Masters Games events are not the same as events as the individual open. Like they just kind of say, hey, this is your programming. We don't need to take the open divisions programming and then scale it to the Masters. They're just going to be completely different programming. I think that's progress right there. We really should, especially when age groups are involved, it should just be different programming. And then as you get into older groups or you start getting more data on injuries, that maybe you do start taking out certain movements or certain loads with certain movements. So I think that's the biggest thing is there is no template, but I do think there needs to be a separation of programming altogether, right? Like I don't think we need to look at every single open workout of the games or a high level competition and come up with a master's version of it. I just don't think it's necessary. And you start to really dumb it down. What is the point of that, right? Stimulus. But to me, stimulus is when you're comparing the two. Competitively, you're never comparing masters to the open division, right? So there is no point in putting them on the same test or trying to find the same stimulus. You could do that in the open, all right? I think that's a cool thing that they do at the open. So if you do want data for that, hey, are we scaling at the right age groups? Do we need to bump it up? Do we need to bump it down? You can use the open for that, but I don't think you need to go so deep into high level in open division competing and try to find skilled versions for it. I just don't think it's necessary.
Let me ask you this. You are now a master's technically. You've been for a couple years.
Yeah.
Personally, how do you feel your body has changed going from a younger CrossFit athlete to a master's athlete?
I would say a little bit of loss of range of motion.
Okay.
Like I've never been a guy that's like, oh, his squat's questionable. And I feel like I'm there now. And that might be a knee issue. That might be, again, I always circle back to what am I doing wrong, right? It's not always like my age, like am I doing less mobility, all that stuff. But that's, to answer your question, range of motion and recovery. It just takes longer to recover. When I say recover, I'm not only talking about, wow, that WOD was really hard. I'm still tired 2 days later or still sore. It's more when I do tweak something. What used to take a week or two to fix, I feel like takes like 3 to 5 to fix now, or just to naturally get better, right? So I think those are the two things I feel the biggest difference. Now, in the same sentence though, as a 36, soon to be 37-year-old, there are a lot of things I can do now much better than I could have 7 years ago. Capacity-wise, quality of gymnastics movement, pacing. I don't know if that really goes into this camp of thought, but I don't think I've gotten in worse shape over the past 5-6 years. There are certain things I just don't have capacity for, speed, maybe a little bit of strength. But, in the latest qualifier, the quarterfinals, I set lifetime PRs in the deadlift and back squat, and I don't even train them that much, those lifts. So I think that I haven't lost much, but if there's one answer to your question, I think range of motion is a little less than what it used to be. And that's very common once you hit the age of 35. We normally lose a little bit of VO2 max, and we normally lose a little bit of range of motion. And it's never a big drastic change in a year or two, but over the course of 10, 15, 20, those inches become feet.
So how do you use that knowledge to apply to programming for masters?
So I don't feel I program for masters right now. I feel that I program for the gym and we scale down from there. We have had discussions internally about we have RX, we have scaled, and then we have Masters RX. And, I think there's some ego involved in saying, no, I don't want that. And it wouldn't be for every workout. It would just be for occasional. But you can look at, for example, the Legends Championship, which we just broke down.
Mm-hmm.
They start scaling a lot of the weights at age 50 or 45 based on the workout. When I took the online CrossFit Masters course, they said they don't start changing weights until the age of 55. And you see that in the quarterfinals, age group qualifiers.
Oh, yeah.
And I've always thought that's too late. And I did some investigating, talked to a few people. That's one of those things. There really was no answer why that was the case. So I think now, and there are people smarter than me that have more access to information, that now that you have a lot of data of what age groups do the workouts really start to slow down, right? Let's say like Fram, 21:15:9. Hey, at the age of 45, basically no one can do it under 4 minutes. We want this to be a 3-minute workout. What do? Change the weight, right? And so I think that's like a very easy, simple example that having some data of where things really slow down and you start to lose the stimulus of the workout, that's when you need to start changing the weights. We have not done that at Bison. So thus I do not program for masters. I have masters athletes on next level So when I'm working on their weights, there is no gym that I'm scaling off of. But that's more about an individual thing. It's not, oh, you're 47, your weights are this. It's no, your strength level is this, and I want this stimulus, you need to go after that. So the personal training part of it, I don't think applies to this. The only thing I think could apply to it is if we ever, what we're doing on Friday's workout here is when you get to 45, we start scaling the weights. And then when you get to 55, we scale the weights and movements even further and the volume. That's something that I've thought about doing a long time, but I just haven't had the strong conviction yet. What are your thoughts on that? Because we actually have talked about this and you were anti.
Yeah, some of it is ego.
Yes.
I mean, why, if everyone else is doing 135-pound shoulder to overheads, I have to do 115 pounds?
Right.
I can't compare myself well to some of my other friends who are younger than me because of that.
Right.
And if I get a crappier score because of it, so be it. I'll take my crappy score. I just don't want that accommodation for me because of my age.
Right.
In a comp, I think it's because I feel like if we're all competing on that level, then I feel like it's fine.
Right.
And you're also looking to keep athletes safe. That's why they took out like some of the workouts for the older age groups at Legends, that because they just felt like that was a lot of volume for them. And if you just keep adding more and more volume for these guys, something's gonna happen. But on an everyday level, if most of these guys I can hang with are doing that weight and rep scheme, why shouldn't I be able to actually do it?
It's tough. I always feel like when the comparison game comes in, I mean, it does work at a gym like this because the gym is so big, a lot of people, a lot of good athletes too. So you really can find tiers of athletes in this gym. A lot of gyms have 75 members. They have 3 people that could do a muscle up. So it's hard. It's like, I want to take your answer in as, well, I compare to this person and that person. But what if you're at a gym in Colorado or Wyoming and there's 75 members and there's only one person in the gym that could do muscle ups, and then you come in, you move out there, you do your thing. You now have to start taking that comparison out. Like, you need to find a new way to find it. And this is what I mean, that I think we almost have to look deeper than the gym, broader than the gym. And this is where I think CrossFit has some opportunity. We talked about new CEO, what can you do? They have a lot of data. There's no question, right? Could they come up with template scaling for gender, but also age? Because when you have that many people, you can really find the average time of this workout, of this movement. When these movements are involved, but this one's not, this movement pattern, anything overhead, anything squatting. We see that anyone above the age of 45 is not even within 20% of people that are 35. So this is where we need to start to dial it back. I think there's an opportunity. I don't have the answer right now. I have a couple guesses based on my experience here, but I do think there's an opportunity out there for someone to take all this data and basically say, hey, we need to start scaling by 10% at the age of 45. And every gym should do this. We're not going to make you, but we should. And then you come on, Sam, to the gym on a Monday morning. Bison's got the RX, the scale, or the RX and the Masters RX. Still scale no matter what, right? But you go from there and say, hey, no matter what, on overhead movements, we scale by 10%. Here's your weight. 135, no, now it's 120.
That would work if it allowed me to work out with the same kind of training volume as a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that would actually help me not take more days off than a 25-year-old. If I'm still saying, well, it's still beating me up, I still have to take like an extra day off, then what's the point? Like, I might as well, not scale.
Right.
The other thing is that these targets are moving. So when you become a 50-year-old to 54-year-old, don't you think that the weights and the scales and the capabilities of those 50 and 54-year-olds are going to go up? They're going up every year.
No question.
So,
it's a moving target.
And so for us to be able to say it's 10% now, it may not be 10% in 5 years. It might be 5%. Who knows?
Yep.
It's amazing how much fitness is being maintained when you see the 35 to 39-year-old division now.
Right.
Like, I watched you guys. You guys look like individual games athletes pretty much.
On a few of the workouts.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would say if you put open division athletes in a few of the workouts, they're not winning all of them. Like, let's take Froning out of it. Like, let's take someone that finished 20th place at the games. He will win the event, the competition, but he's not going to win every event.
Absolutely.
And that's an angle of competing with the masters as well.
How about the women? Let's talk about the women, because as an athlete and as a guy, obviously, I like looking at the whiteboard, but there are so many different workouts where I'm like, that weight was either way too heavy for them,
it's tough,
or way too light.
Yep.
They talked about legless rope climbs and certain things where women just have traditionally more difficulty on versus men.
Yep.
Like, how do you deal with that as a program?
So yeah, that's a tough one. And I will admit this. When I think about weights for workouts, I think about guys first. And it's only because I can relate. It's not because I favor guys, right? It's because
You're a guy?
I'm a guy, and like my experience, that's what speaks to me. When I write down a workout that I want to have X amount of weight in, or a feel, I'm like, all right, it's a medium feel. Let's go 185. All right, what do I normally do for 185 for the girls? It's 125. That's what I've done for a long time. And that might not be a good enough answer for some. To say like, oh, that's the way you've always done it, that's not a good enough answer. And I do agree in some cases. And that's why it's a polarizing question to me, because sometimes I have it figured out. Sometimes I feel like I don't. And there's one thing I will say about this, a trend that I have seen over the years on day-to-day workouts, your typical CrossFit workouts, the girls in our gym, let's just use our gym as an example.
Yeah.
For the most part, outscore the guys.
Yes.
In the open, every single year, when I look at the combined leaderboard of men to women, if you want to put the top 20 names on there, 16 or 17 of them are guys. Like it's domination, right? And it's in my head, I'm trying to think of one. Am I not making it hard enough for the girls at the gym on day-to-day workouts? Because why does this happen every year? It's not one or two times. And so that is telling you that in the CrossFit Open, the programming is challenging to the point where the girls cannot hang with the scores that they are putting in comparison to guys throughout the year. So is it a shortcoming on the programmer's fault that I should be making stuff heavier for them, right? Or is it just, maybe there's another factor that I'm just not seeing? Why is it that way?
Do you think about the best women athletes at the gym when you scale to that athlete? I mean, when you scale the workout. So if you say 185, 125, you're thinking about a particular woman athlete and you're like, okay, where would they be on this particular workout?
Yeah. Like when I say when I program, right? You program that workout for the best athletes in the gym at that workout, and then we scale down from there.
Right.
And it's a mix. I never have like a bias towards guys or girls on that. Like there's certain workouts with like toes to bar.
And gymnastics. Yeah.
Gymnastics. You're like, oh, Elena right away. Right. And then, but if you're thinking about a weightlifting workout, talking about Boak, a running workout, Owen and Hawkinson, right? Like those are the guys that, all right, if they can finish this workout in this time, we're good to go. Everyone else got to scale down from there, or you chase it, right? And so, yeah, I wouldn't say I have, but one thing I do have to answer your question, the upper body strict gymnastics workouts. We don't do a lot of them, but we do them. Handstand push-ups, strict pull-ups, even more upper body dominant movements like push-ups, strict press, right? I do look at guys more than girls because, and maybe I shouldn't, and this is where I think your question is getting to, there are games events now where it's, example, 3 legless rope climbs for men, 2 for women. 15 ring muscle ups for men, 12 for women. There's like a 10% capacity difference. And I do think that that scale comes from information. That, hey, we had guys and girls both do this same exact workout. 60 athletes, 30 and 30. The top 24 scorers are men. Like that means it's too lopsided in not men's, because men are not competing against women. So it's just for information purposes. Does that mean you need to start scaling some upper body movements for females in comparison to men? Now I'm going to give you another example in a sec, but what are your thoughts on that?
I guess it just depends. I mean, I was going to throw out a bunch of workouts to you and see where you thought the traditional scales worked or didn't work for women versus men. Because, I mean, okay, so Fran, right? So what's the men's weight? 95?
95, 65.
Right. And so women 65, like if you look at a games athlete, I would say the women games athletes are probably faster.
They are.
Than the men on it.
They are.
So 95, 65 seems like an obsolete scale.
Now, tell me this though. Now we're going to the weeds. Why are women faster with 65 than men with 95?
because women are proportionally stronger at 65 than men can handle 95? I don't know. That would be my first thought.
I think part of it is the range of motion is less. You know, they generally are shorter.
Yeah.
Right. So, and shorter in height, shorter overhead. It's just the amount that the bar travels is less. I don't know if it's a strength thing. I don't know if women are better at squatting or doing thrusters than men. It's just like watching Colton Mertens do thrusters versus Cole Sager. They could be moving at the same rate of speed, miles per hour. But because the range of motion is a foot less, the guy is shorter is going to go faster. They could be moving the same exact speed, but the guy on his left will be moving 1/10 of a second faster per rep. That adds up to, 10 seconds in a big set, right? That's where I don't know. I don't know the answer, right? I do think that with weightlifting, anything moving exterior loads, the general percentage that is approximate is like 65 to 70%. So whatever a man is lifting, whatever a male is lifting, go to 65 to 70% of your weight. That's about where the women are. I think the women have gotten so much stronger over the years that now it's like advantage them. The number might need to be closer to 80%.
That's where my feeling is going with it.
Okay.
Every time I see a 135/95,
Yep.
I'm like,
I
that's
agree.
tough. That's tough to keep up with women on that one.
I've been thinking the same as you. And it's not just range of motion. Part of it is, but like Amy and I, we're the same height, and so I think that 65 for her and 95 for me it's like a twig for her, depending on the movement, right?
How much do you weigh?
205.
How much does she weigh?
I don't even know. And I'm not going to say that on the podcast either.
But I would just say from a strength to weight ratio, she's stronger than you are.
I agree with that. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. So, I mean, and this is funny. Like, this is why I like talking about this stuff. Like, you really can go in a lot of different directions. And I don't want to be like, disorganized and talking about this, but I want you guys to understand that when you start talking about this, you can talk about so many different things. And honestly, like, Bison, even Amy and I, you and Susan, it's not enough information. Like, you need mass numbers. And I remember when we talked about this when the CEO was changing.
Yeah.
I think it was more when the first one got hired.
Yeah.
The information, it's there. And if you are, and there's people that are better with information statistics and algorithms and all that than others, but I hope CrossFit can do something with this. And I can see it in the games already because the weights are being pushed up a little bit with women in comparison to the men. But also another thing is machine work, right? Normally when I program machines at the gym, it's 80%, right? And I think that's where weightlifting is going to head towards. So like, if someone that doesn't do the math in their head really well, a 225 deadlift or 225 barbell for guys is usually 155 for women. This would now go to 225, would go up to 180 almost. And like, you start thinking about that.
I don't think a lot of women would be able to deadlift that for reps
here, but I think at the top it would, and why do you think that's the case? Because we don't train that weight. A lot of women here are really comfortable with 155 because that's been the way we've RX'd it.
So if we force them to lift heavier, they would adapt to it?
I think so. I trust the girls that and more than the guys. No offense, guys. The guys would be like, oh, it's too heavy. But I think the girls here would figure that out. But the machine work, if I program a 1,000 meter row for guys, I will program 800 meter for women. You don't do that for running, obviously, but why? The body weight. This is where body weight matters, right? How much you weigh impacts how well you do on the machines. Fact. All right. But now we're stereotyping, right? I have some guys here that weigh less than some of the girls here. So now I'm going down this path like, all right, so maybe we need to do weight classes.
That's what I was kind of thinking, because I think if you took on average strength to weight ratio, the women would generally outpoint the men.
Yep.
There.
We just did a powerlifting meet here, right?
Yeah.
And that was that whole field, that's what that is. We don't really care who's moving the most weight. I mean, it's cool to watch, but how much you weigh?
Right.
Like someone that weighs 100 pounds that lifts 200 pounds, it's much more impressive than someone that's 200 pounds lifts 200 pounds.
Right.
Right. So,
or even 300 pounds.
So now I'm asking myself, if you're going to start scaling for age and gender, right? Chris Spieler was big on this. He thinks there should be weight classes in competitive CrossFit. And because he was a 150, 60 pound guy that was trying to lift with guys that are 210, doing the same weights. In my opinion, I don't want to go down that path because I think your body weight can help and hurt you in a responsible program, right? Like there are workouts where like if you weigh a lot, it's going to help you in today's workout. It's going to crush you tomorrow. So it's on the athlete to kind of find, to try to be the medium. Like there are athletes in our gym that probably competitively, if they want to compete, they need to lose weight. But there's also some athletes in our gym that need to gain weight. And it's a happy medium that you need to find.
The one thing I don't like about CrossFit is that it does generally favor shorter athletes in terms of accessibility to the general public.
Yep.
So if I'm a 5'10", 5'11", 6-foot guy, and you go into a CrossFit gym and you see all the really good athletes and they're all 5'7", 5'6", Matt Frazier,
Yep.
Rich Froning.
Yep.
It really makes it difficult to say, hey, listen, you're 6'2", you should really be doing CrossFit.
It's tough.
I don't feel like, I feel like CrossFit should be made more accessible to taller individuals. And it makes, like, for example, Amy Edelman look even more amazing when she's standing there 5'10" versus all these 5'2" or 5-foot athletes at the competition.
Yeah. So what do you do though? Change movements?
I don't know. That's the thing. Maybe you need to include more, or maybe you do need some.
Like the extreme is like, hey, if you're above 5'10" and a woman, you only have to do 6 handstand push-ups. Everyone else has to do 9. Like, are you really going to go down that path? Probably not. Like that kind of goes against the mold of CrossFit is, like the methodology behind it.
Yeah.
But this is where I think competing, there's some fruition to it with competing. And that's where I think there's a lot of responsibility on the person that's programming a competition. That, I mean, it's unfair for Amy to do, next to a short person, rowing, wall balls, and box jumps, right? Or step ups, right? Like, she's so much bigger, it's so much easier, the box up to her knees. But then what at the next workout, you have handstand push-ups and front squats, where the distance you're traveling is a good foot less. Like it balances itself out. So that's where like my answer on that is it should balance itself out. I do think competitive CrossFit will always favor short people because of just the range of motion and the amount of movements. But there's enough in there that you can make up for some of it.
How do you program your mix of cardio, gymnastics, weights, strength training every day for the gym?
For the gym.
Yeah, because some of that also influences how you program for women versus men.
Right. I mean, I have found over the years that women recover their lower bodies a lot more than men. And I don't know if that's an anatomy thing, like with their hips, the way they're put together there.
What do you mean by recover?
Like not as sore, not as tight when after a big, like a Karen, like I can guarantee you the guys are going to have a harder time squatting the next 2-3 days later if we did something else where everyone's sore, but more like the range of motion comes back, their production in their legs is just better, but it's the opposite with men. If we do like an extreme push-up workout, pull-up workout, upper body dominant, I feel like the women predominantly get much more sore and they're beat up they have a harder time kind of recovering from that and just producing enough strength. So do I program that around that at the gym? No, to be honest with you. Like I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm going to help the girls out this week or help the guys out this week. Because again, it's all just like opinion too. I don't have like a scientific experiment in front of me saying X, Y, and Z, but I have yet to ever change anything in a workout other than weights and distances on a machine when it comes to guys, girls. And there are workouts where I'm like, yo, everyone's doing the same thing. We're all doing a 2K row today, guys. Like,
Sure.
So yes, the guys will be 7 minutes, ladies will be 8, right? But I have thought about, and I don't know if it would even be received that well here, to changing some upper body dominant movements. Like tomorrow's work, let's say we have a strict handstand push-up workout next week and there's 5 at a time. I might make it 4 for the ladies. And I do think there's going to be someone like Elena who's a ninja who's going to be like, dude, I can do strict handstand push-ups better than every guy here. She would never say that, but like it's the truth.
Right.
But again, it's still, I am thinking about going down that path with just a few movements, not a lot.
I would like to try to challenge you and say, would you be willing to try for a week or a month to do what they said on the Savant podcast, which is just program for the women and then scale for the guys?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be pretty easy because like I've done it for so long, like saying like, hey girls, it's the 75-pound barbell, guys, it's 115. Or do we start going that, all right, the 75-pound 75-pound barbell usually crush the guys with the 115.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make this 105 for the guys. Like, is that what you mean by that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, so you did the bison benchmark, which included thrusters, and what was it? It was 115?
That was 105.
105.
105.70.
Okay. And how did you choose the 70 for the women?
Because when I go 90, it's 60. Like, it's funny. It's like, I don't even think one gender first. I just go 95, 65. That's the way it's always been.
Yep.
And now I'm going to go up 10 pounds for the guys, but I'm only going to go up 5 pounds for the ladies, which, if you talk about percentage of jump in weight, the guys did a little bit more. And it probably should have went the other way. Like, I probably should have done 105.75.
And right. That's what I was kind of thinking. But
so that's what you mean by challenging me to say, like, hey,
yeah,
do the girls first and then scale the guys.
Right. Because then you maybe would have thought, all right, I'm going to do 75 pound for the ladies.
Yeah. I'm still working on the results of that workout.
I was about to say, who do you think did better gender wise on that overall?
Girls. I do.
And was it the gymnastics movements, or
I think it was the
thrusters?
I actually do think it was the thrusters. From the classes I watched, they were just better at getting them done and getting to the max rep portion.
Because it was lighter than what the guys had to deal with?
Probably. Honestly, it might have been. Yeah. So you know what? I would just do guys and girls same ways from now on. Give the guys a self-esteem boost. You girls here are getting too fit. But yeah, it's a fun thing to talk about, guys. And I would say one of the last things I want to wrap up with is just going back to the age groups is as we get older, right? And I'm not just saying this because I'm a little banged up right now. I feel responsibility now more than I used to of making sure that the masters athletes stay injury-free. And I do think there are probably some injuries, whether they're something serious or like just a simple wear and tear, that I wonder if we did start changing some of the RX at age 45, does that keep people in the game longer, or does it promote too much intensity? Because, we're always going to do our strength days. Like, we have a strength day tomorrow. We have a strength day Friday. Like, we're moving, and Thursday. We have a lot of strength work this week at Bison. You could still go lift. There is no RX for that. That's just like percentage lifting. But in a high intensity classic CrossFit workout, I think there is some more thought needed and potentially a move needed for that once we hit to that 45 age group, maybe even 40, that we start taking the loads down by X%.
I think you should try it for a month and sort of get the feedback on that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like it at first, but I'd be willing to try that as an experiment.
Example, Friday's WOD.
Yeah.
I hope you do it. All right. Your age group is, instead of 135, it's 115, and it's 44 dubs instead of 54.
So it's
doing less volume and less toes to bar. You're doing everything less.
So instead of 5 rounds of 18 toes to bar, it's 15 toes to bar.
Yep.
Instead of 135 shoulder to overhead, it's 115.
Yep.
And instead of 54 double unders, it's 44.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm
like, are you going to feel like you're leaving some on the table? Like, there are some people here that like they get bothered if they get capped out of a workout.
Well, I'm going to get capped regardless of whether you don't.
No. I'm going to increase the cap from the comp. I'm going to make it 15 minutes. You better not get cut.
The toes to bar is what limits you. So going from 15 to 18, maybe going from 115 on will save my shoulders a little bit more.
I think it's more likely you'll go unbroken.
Yeah.
Like, I bet if that was 135, and Sam's a very high, he won't say it, he's a very high level masters athlete. He's been in the quarterfinal multiple years in a row. So 135 does not scare him, right? But I do think
if I was break it up.
If I was going to watch, if I was going to watch you do that workout, you would be breaking up 135, where I'm thinking 115 might be.
I would say, let me see if I can go unbroken on it.
Go for it.
Yeah, 115, yeah.
And 44 dubs, like, it doesn't sound like it is. It's only 50 less reps over the course of the workout. But in that state, that's a minute right there. That will be a minute of trip ups, picking up your rope, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 15 less toes to bar, right? Mm-hmm. That's probably a minute. Like, we're shaving 2 minutes off the workout just by doing that.
Yeah.
And it puts you back in the stimulus game. Even though I think you would be fine with 135, but would your body thank you? Would you feel better? You're moving less weight. You're doing less volume. I do think there's some truth to it.
But then there's more pressure on me to get farther in the workout because of it.
Would you be pushing too hard? Right.
It's interesting. I think I'm going to try it at the Legends RX for 50-54.
I think it's smart.
And we'll give it a go, and I'll give you some feedback.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. If you have any feedback on this workout, on this podcast episode, we would love to hear it, because as you can see, you probably heard we don't have an answer. There's things that we might experiment with as a coach and programming, as a gym itself. And I love feedback on stuff like this, especially where there is no clear-cut answer. So if you have an opinion on it, it will help. And one last thing before we end it, we have an episode coming up that it's going to be a Q&A. And we are going to make a post on our Instagram and have you guys send questions to the Instagram. So you will be anonymous on the podcast, but we will know who asked the question. We will not put your name out there. And
unless you want to.
Yeah, unless you want to. Totally fine with that. And that will be an episode where we might even have a third person come on and either read the question to us. We won't know what they are ahead of time. And it'll be a fun little Q&A. So we want to kind of do more stuff like that in the near future. So just be on the lookout for that over the next week or two, and have a great day. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.